off in their chosen methods. Poison is a popular choice for many, and Eileen Wuornos was popularized by her .22 caliber pistol murder spree. But it isn't often that you hear about the brutal and gory scenes committed by female villains. In the case of Lady Bluebeard, as the media quickly deemed her upon the discovery of her remarkable horrors, Belle Gunness was a large woman truly unlike any other. With strength and experience on her side, she turned murder into a business. A sudden fire, thought to be a tragic end to a woman and her family, was never truly concluded. After the fire was contained, 4 bodies were found in the ashes. 3 of the bodies were identifiable. The 4th was not. Is it possible that Belle Gunness survived the house fire and went on to commit more crimes? Well, let's take a trip to the self-proclaimed prettiest and happiest country home in northern Indiana, and through the life of its owner, Belle. Born in Norway in November 1859, Belle was the youngest of 8 children. Her given name was Brynhild Paulsdatter Storseth, and she was physically gifted from a young age. At maturity, she stood at 6 feet tall and weighed over 250 pounds. By the age of 24, Belle would emigrate to America and become established with a more American-sounding name. She had worked hard over the years to save for this transition, wanting to follow an older sister to a better life. She lived in Chicago with her sister and brother-in-law until she met a love of her own. Within a year of moving to America, Belle was getting married to a Norwegian-born Mads Sorensen, a charming couple, no doubt, who would go on to begin a life of their own together, for better or worse. Times certainly weren't easy for the couple after all. During their 15 years of marriage, the Sorensen household would be plagued with misfortune that just so happened to benefit them. For example, the couple tried to open a confectionery during their early years, but the business would ultimately fail. Along with this detrimental financial failure, the building also caught fire and was ruined. Luckily, no money was lost. The building had been insured and the Sorensens were paid for their losses. The confectionery would be only one thing on the list of destruction Belle left behind. From 1884 to 1900, several buildings in the Sorensen family would fall victim to fires, and 2 children would die in infancy due to acute colitis. It is assumed each of these things was insured, including each child. If doctors had thought to check, they would have noticed acute colitis had very similar symptoms to strychnine poisoning. Though it was not confirmed, it is widely believed poison is what killed the 2 infants. The sudden death of her husband, Mads, only heightened the suspicion around Belle. It was July 30th, 1900 when Mads died, which immediately aroused the suspicion of his family. Perhaps coincidentally, July 30th was reported to be the only day the 2 life insurance policies overlapped. When Belle went to collect the money one day after Mads' funeral, the Sorensen family demanded an inquest into his death. It does not appear anything came of this, as there was no further record. What is known is a family doctor stated the death was caused by complications associated with his enlarged heart. Belle would collect $8,500 from the policies on Mads and buy a property on the outskirts of LaPorte, Indiana. With her, she took 3 daughters, Jenny, Myrtle, and Lucy. Jenny is known to be adopted, but researchers believe Myrtle and Lucy were 2 surviving children of Belle and Mads. Along with this new home, Belle would continue to do what she did best, make money off of her crimes. She worked to make her home what she deemed the prettiest and happiest country home in northern Indiana, while planning another step in her diabolical plan. This next step of Belle's plan came in the form of Peter Gunness. Gunness was a local pig farmer and butcher who was also Norwegian-born, making him a perfect target for Belle. The 2 would be married by the spring of 1902. It didn't take long after the union of the couple for death to follow Belle once more. Only about a week had passed after the wedding when Gunness's infant daughter died while in Belle's care. It would be less than a year of marriage before Peter would also come to an untimely demise. The story of his death told by Belle differs based on the source you read, but each story reports the same bizarre details. According to the now twice widowed, Peter reached for a shoe on the floor when a cast iron meat grinder fell from its place above. It came down and hit Peter right between the eyes, killing him. The story didn't sit right with people of LaPorte. Gunness was a strong man who had been doing this trade for many years. The death seemed very unlikely. The neighborhood openly spoke about their beliefs of her guilt. Gossip would be set ablaze when it was reported her daughter Jenny told a classmate her mother killed her father with a meat cleaver. When questioned by the coroner, Jenny disputed the claims of the rumors. With this crucial piece of evidence gone, Belle was able to convince the coroner she was innocent. She collected insurance money once more and would soon give birth to a son in 1903. The child is presumably Gunness's, and he was named Philip. He survived his infancy. Somewhere in the timeline of events, Gunness's eldest daughter would go to live with her uncle, sparing her from the fate of every other child Belle lived with. After her second husband's death, the year that passed involved Belle working the pig farm herself, using the knowledge she gained from the 9 months of marriage she had to her previous victim to further her own luxuries. It was late in 1906 when Jenny went missing, or as Belle put it, went away. Friends and neighbors of the teenager were concerned about the sudden disappearance, but Belle brushed them off. According to Belle, Jenny was sent to a school in Los Angeles. This didn't feel right to the people of LaPorte, but they had no way to confirm the claims. It wouldn't be long after Jenny's departure that Belle hired a farmhand named Ray Lamphere. Also around the same time, in early 1907, Belle began to post matrimonial ads in Norwegian newspapers all throughout the Midwest. The newspaper she selected would be published in major cities such as Chicago. In these ads, she portrayed herself as a young and attractive widow with land, being sure to include phrases such as "triflers need not apply." Responses to the ad came in relatively quickly, allowing Belle to get a great start to her business. Belle would correspond with the suitors until she gained their trust and then invite them to be with her in her home using undeniable charm to get the men within her grasp. When these suitors traveled to the prettiest and happiest country home in northern Indiana to live out their married futures, most of them would never be seen again. Bachelor after bachelor would appear in LaPorte, Indiana. Some traveled with their savings in pocket, while others would last be seen withdrawing money from the local bank. Just as soon as one man was spotted and made his adventure to Belle's home, he would disappear again. When their loved ones never returned, relatives of these men would send letters asking about their whereabouts, but Belle would always say she had never seen them. In some cases, she even offered to help one of her victims' relatives look for him, but she expected compensation. This awful business of robbery and murder would be very lucrative to Belle, but it couldn't last forever. When Belle fired Ray Lamphere, the farmhand, she would find herself plagued by the man. During his service, he'd become obsessed with the large woman. He would continue bothering her until she had taken him above a court to have his sanity judged. She would also have him arrested for trespassing at some point after the termination. As a replacement, Belle hired a new farmhand, Joe Maxon, to continue the work Lamphere had been doing. Around this time, she would also visit a local lawyer to get her will written. Her reasoning to the lawyer was that she had been threatened by Lamphere. She would claim the man told her that he would kill her and her family before burning their house down. Despite these claims to the lawyer, Belle would never go to the police with these threats. Considering she made a fuss over his trespassing beforehand, it can be assumed this was a setup to her plan. On the morning of April 28, 1908, the Gunness farmhouse went up in flames. The blaze began sometime in the early morning, but was noticed by neighbors quickly. When the flames were contained, 4 corpses were found, but only 3 could be identified. The 3 children of the home, Myrtle, Lucy, and Philip, were all positively identified. The body of an adult female would be the only body to remain unidentified. This is because the woman had been decapitated and the head was nowhere to be found. When the people were asked to confirm the identity of the body as Belle Gunness, there were people left and right saying the headless corpse wasn't Belle. Neighbors and family ties were not convinced with the body due to significant weight and height discrepancies. Lamphere was a prime suspect quickly and was arrested and put on trial for murder and arson. He would only be found guilty of arson, with there being a witness stating they saw Lamphere running away from the farmhouse that April morning. However, the jury found him not guilty of murder, adding their input by saying they believed Belle was dead. During the process, bodies were being discovered by the crew of policemen who went back to the house looking for more evidence. The body of her adopted daughter, Jenny, was among the first of the discoveries. From there, sacks of body parts began to be unearthed from the property. When the search was finished, they had found a total of 14 men and 3 children buried. The full story wouldn't come to light for about another 2 years. As he was serving out the sentence for larceny, Lamphere knew he was dying and wanted to clear his conscience of the sins he committed. His guilty conscience led to his confession, spilling all the horrific details to Reverend E.A. Shell. According to Lamphere, Belle would lure men in with her charm, speaking sweetly in the letters she sent. She gained their confidence enough to have them travel out to her. They would survive long enough for her to get their money, but after the exchange of funds, Belle would drug them or otherwise knock them unconscious. From there, she would murder the men and use her butchering knowledge to dismember them. Lamphere told the Reverend he helped bury the bodies, but was not a part of the murdering of the men. Belle would fill sacks with body parts and apply quicklime to hide the stench once buried in the ground. Lamphere said he believed Belle faked her death and escaped. He confessed she had told him she would take him with her, but ultimately took a different road and left him behind. Shortly after this confession,